Welcome to From Center Ice, the podcast. My name is Courtney, and happy Friday, everybody. Since it is Friday afternoon/evening, this is the From Center Ice happy hour. I'm here to wind down your week with a nice hour-long podcast episode talking about what's gone on this week in the hockey world. And once again, I have some house wine with me. Unfortunately, now it is July 1st, so it is not Pride Month anymore, but I only have 2 of these left, so I figure I might as well keep it going. And you know, it's always Pride Month here on From Center Ice, if I'm being honest. So I still have my house wine. I'll probably have my last one next week. Still got the Pride jersey up behind me that Johnny Rockford designed for me. Have my Blackhawks Pride hat on, and I have some Pride Converse shoes on here. So, you know, just keeping that going throughout July and, of course, every month. And, of course, since I started a podcast episode, here comes my cat with something to say. Come on, buddy. Do you have something to say about Pride Month? Do you support your mother and her prideness? His favorite toy is a little rainbow, I don't know what they call them. It's like a string, or it's not string, but it's a long piece of cloth, and it's all rainbow colored. Come on. Do you have something to say to your fans? We're just gonna do the cord rubbing thing, huh? Oh, gosh. Come on. Come on, buddy. Come say hi to your fans. No? If you are new to From Center Ice, every time I record either a Friday evening happy hour or a Monday cozy cast, my cat loves to come join me and usually has something to say, or he will just purr very loudly into the microphone, or just rub up against my cords and make me very nervous that he's gonna knock my audio recorder off, or disconnect my microphone from the recorder. Come on, buddy. He's a very possessive cat, and he doesn't enjoy if I'm talking to anybody that isn't him, so he has to come figure out what's going on. Usually he stops caring when he sees that I'm not talking to another person here in the room, and then he walks away, like he just did. So, anyway, keeping the Pride celebration going throughout at least the beginning of July, but like I said, if I'm being honest, every month is Pride Month around here, so take another sip here before I put it down. And how has your week been? The first week without hockey for the offseason. The first week is always really weird, kind of an adjustment week. I've found myself going to check the hockey schedule if somebody asks me what I'm doing on a certain day. I'm like, oh, let me check. Oh, there's nothing to check because there's currently no hockey on. I've also been playing a lot of NHL 22, like more than I have in a very long time. I don't know if it's hockey withdrawals or I just don't have anything else to do at night now. So I'm like, might as well still fill it with hockey somehow. So let me play NHL. But I've also caught up on about 20 or 30 something episodes of 32 Thoughts, the podcast, with, of course, Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. So yeah, I maybe not adjusting very well to life without hockey on at night if I'm just binging through that podcast and just playing NHL 22 constantly. I have like a callus growing on my finger from where my controller sits, so that's when you know it's a problem. But it is what it is. It's only the first week. We have to get through this, and then it gradually gets easier and easier. I think, like I said on Monday, or I guess it was Tuesday when I recorded the Cozy Cast, we go through this every year. The off-season always comes around, but every time it does, it's like, what do we do now? I don't know how to adjust once again to life without hockey. So, been playing NHL, been listening to 32 Thoughts. I actually just caught up while I was finishing up my notes for this episode, so then I had to move on to a different hockey podcast. So now I'm catching up on the Blackhawks Talk podcast, and I realized that I was so behind that the trade deadline hasn't even happened yet, where I was at in that one. And for some podcasts, I skip episodes that don't really apply anymore, but for hockey ones, if there's not too many and they're not too ridiculously long, I tend to keep them and still listen to them because it reminds me of stuff that has happened that I totally forgot about. Because it's a very long season, and paying attention to more than one team, and especially being totally entrenched in the playoff teams as of late, it's kind of nice to remember what's gone on with the Blackhawks, but I realized they were still talking about Brandon Hagel as if he was still on the team, because he was at the time of that recording, so that was a bit depressing. But yeah, so I've been doing that. I've been watching some documentaries on Netflix. I just watched the Challenger documentary series this morning. I watched all 4 episodes of that, about the space shuttle Challenger that unfortunately exploded. That was a very sad documentary series, and I mean, I've been watching true crime documentaries, so they've all been pretty sad, but that one wasn't. I mean, it was kind of crime related because there was a lot of incompetence that went into that whole tragedy, but it's not technically labeled true crime. But it was very sad, but very well done. I believe it came out in 2020, so I am a bit behind on these documentaries I'm watching, but I don't watch them much during the hockey season, so the off season is when I have time to catch up on stuff, and so now that is what I am doing. But that's how I've been spending my days, pretty much, doing some laundry, doing chores around the house, which is weird that I didn't have time to do that during the playoffs because that was just crazy. It was watch hockey at night, then record, then wake up and read through hockey news, and then record, and then watch hockey, and this endless cycle, pretty much. Didn't have time to do much else, so I just kind of gave up on my house until the off season. So now I'm trying to work through some household chores, and that's how we're coping over here, I guess. I thought about doing like an Instagram series, like a day in the life during the off season, and the random things that a hockey fan finds to do that they don't think about doing during the season because it's just hockey 24/7. But we'll see. So yeah, what have you been up to now that there's no hockey to watch? Have you been thinking about hockey? Have you just completely taken a break from it? You only get about a week and a half of a break because the draft is next week. It starts next Thursday, the 7th, and then free agency opens up on the 13th. And that's weird because today is July 1st, and typically free agency in the NHL opens up on July 1st, but because of COVID and how schedules got all sorts of messed up with the shortened seasons and having playoffs in August in 2020 and then everything else that followed there, they've had to push it back. Hopefully next summer it is on time and July 1st. So even though today isn't free agency day, it is a happy hour day, so it's still a good day. But speaking of free agency, actually, 13 years ago today, the Chicago Blackhawks signed Marian Hossa to a 12-year contract, and that was the biggest free agency signing, it has to be, in Chicago Blackhawks history. I know if we go back in time and look at all of the free agency signings, maybe there are some other big names as well. I didn't decide to take a look for this episode because there's actually a lot to talk about today. But yeah, 13 years ago, they signed Marian Hossa to that contract, and the Blackhawks don't win probably any of their Stanley Cups without Marian Hossa. It's incredible how important he was to that team, and he is forever a legend in the city of Chicago. And how do you not love Big Hoss? I think everybody loves Marian Hossa. At least all Blackhawks fans love Marian Hossa. Maybe not Flyers fans or Bruins fans or Tampa fans, but all Blackhawks fans love them some Big Hoss. So yeah, and talking about Marian Hossa is a nice little segue here, because since retiring, or unofficially retiring due to his skin condition with his equipment, he was then inducted into the Hall of Fame, and we have this year's Hall of Fame draft class, which I wasn't able to get to on Monday because there was so much to talk about wrapping up the Stanley Cup final and talking about the Avalanche and the Lightning. So I didn't get to talk about the 2022 Hall of Fame class, and there's some big names there. First up, we have Rika Salinen. She was a longtime Finnish national women's player. She played 16 seasons with Finland's national team. She won 2 Olympic bronze medals, 1 silver medal in the World Championships, and 6 bronze medals in the championships. She has 3 European Championship gold medals, and in international play, she played 134 games. She scored 134 goals and 166 assists for 300 points. She played in the Finnish Women's League for 11 years. She scored 201 goals, 194 assists for 395 points. She retired in 2019 at the age of 46. She was one of the first 2 women inducted into the Finnish Hockey Hall of Fame. She was inducted into the IIHF Hall of Fame in 2010 as the first European woman to be inducted into the IIHF Hall of Fame, and the 4th woman overall to be inducted. She is the all-time leading European scorer in World Championships and Olympics, and she becomes the 9th woman player to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and the first woman not born in North America. So congratulations to her, a wonderful career there, very deserving of being in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And there's so many players that are. I know every year when the draft class, the Hall of Fame class is announced, people are like, what about this person and this person? So many people are deserving of it, and hopefully one day everybody who is deserving does get their chance. But up next in the builder category, we have Herb Carnegie going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. He began playing hockey in 1938 with the Toronto Young Rangers, and from the 44-45 season to the 47-48 season, he played in the Quebec Provincial League for Shawinigan and Sherbrooke, and was named MVP in 1946, 1947, and 1949. He was given a tryout with the New York Rangers in 1948 and was offered $2,700 to play in their minor league system, but he was playing more money in the Quebec League, so he turned them down and retired from playing in 1953. It should also be known that he was a black player, and it's thought that that kept him from playing in the NHL. Of course, there is a long history of racism in the league and, of course, in North America and all over the world, really. But he had such an impact on the hockey world. After retiring, he started the Future Aces Hockey School. It was one of the first hockey schools in Canada, and he wrote the Future Aces Creed in an attempt to foster respect, tolerance, diversity, and sportsmanship amongst young people. And that is still going on today, actually. I took this from their website. The Herbert H. Carnegie Future Aces Foundation is a registered charity that fosters self-esteem and ethical behavior. Our programs focus on youth building positive character traits that reinforce positive and inclusive behavior while encouraging youth to attain the highest level of achievement both personally and academically within their capabilities. In 1996, he published a biography. He was inducted into the Canada's Sports Hall of Fame in 2001, the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame in 2014, and, funny enough, his granddaughter, Bernice Carnegie, is a co-owner of the Toronto Six in the PHF, the Professional Hockey Federation. So his legacy lives on through his granddaughter, now a co-owner of a PHF team. So congrats to Herb Carnegie, also well-deserved there. And then we move on to some NHL players. First up, we have Roberto Luongo. I'm sure most of you remember that name. Longtime goaltender in the NHL. He was drafted 4th overall by the New York Islanders in 1997, and it's kind of funny to think about him being drafted by the Islanders, because when most people think of Luongo, you think the Vancouver Canucks, but that is not where he started his career. He played 19 years in the NHL, 1,045 games. He had a record of 489 wins, 392 losses, and 124 overtime or shootout losses. He had a career save percentage of .919 and a career goals against average of 2.52. He played 24 games with the Islanders in the 1999-2000 season. He had a record of 7-14-1. He had a .904 save percentage and a 3.25 goals against average. Then he went to the Florida Panthers for 4 seasons and spent 8 seasons in Vancouver. That is why he is most known for being a goaltender for the Vancouver Canucks. But then he went back to the Florida Panthers to finish out his career. With Vancouver, he had 448 games, a record of 252 wins, 137 losses, and 50 overtime or shootout losses, a .919 save percentage, and a 2.36 goals against average. With the Florida Panthers, combined his first and his second stint there, he had 573 games played, with a record of 230 wins, 241 losses, 73 overtime or shootout losses, a .919 save percentage, and a 2.62 goals against average. So if there's anything you can say about Roberto Luongo, is that he is very consistent with his save percentage, having a career percentage of .919 and having that save percentage in both Vancouver and Florida as well. He was a Vezina finalist 3 times, an All-Star 5 times, a Hart Trophy finalist twice, a gold medalist in the Olympics twice. I'm sorry, he was only a Hart finalist once, and then won the gold medal in the Olympics twice, and he won the Jennings Trophy in 2010-11, and he also retired in 2019. And then we move on to some forwards, and before going back to Vancouver, we skip on over to Ottawa, where we have Daniel Alfredson. He was a 6th-round pick to the Ottawa Senators in 1994. It's just crazy to think of some of these fantastic NHL players and them being late-round draft picks, like a 6th-round pick for Daniel Alfredson. He played 18 years in the NHL, playing 1,246 games. He scored 444 goals, 713 assists for 1,157 points. He spent 17 years with the Ottawa Senators and then finished out his career with 1 year in the Detroit Red Wings organization. And I had totally forgotten that he went to Detroit after his long career in Ottawa. He retired in 2014, but before that, he won the Calder Trophy in the 1995-96 season. He was an Olympic gold medalist. He won the King Clancy Trophy, the Marc Messier Leadership Trophy, or Leadership Award, and was a silver medalist in the Olympics and was inducted into the IIHF Hall of Fame in 2018. So a long list of accomplishments there for Daniel Alfredson as well. And then we hop back over to the Vancouver Canucks, where you have Daniel and Henrik Sadine both being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame together, because how else would you have it? In 1999, they were drafted second and third overall. Daniel was taken second, Henrik was taken third. I don't know how they decided which one to take third or second. Maybe they went alphabetical. Daniel was taken second, Henrik third. Who knows? They were picked by Vancouver, of course. They played 17 seasons in the NHL, all with the Vancouver Canucks. Daniel played 1,306 games, scoring 393 goals, 648 assists for 1,041 points. Henrik Sadine played 1,330 games, so 24 more than his brother there, scoring 240 goals, 830 assists for 1,070 points. He was more of the assist guy. Daniel was more of the goal scorer there. They won the Olympic gold medal in 2005-2006 season. Daniel was a silver medalist and won the Ted Lindsay Award, the Art Ross Trophy in 2010-11. That's for the player with the most points, and he had 104 points that season. Henrik won the Art Ross in 2009, 2010. I'm having a hard time talking today. With 112 points. He was a Hart Trophy winner, a King Clancy Leadership Award winner twice in 2016 and 2018, and both of them retired in 2018. And it's only right that they would be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame together, because everything else was also done together, but they are twins, so it makes sense. So the Vancouver Canucks have a big Hall of Fame class this year, so congratulations to them with Luongo and the Sadine twins, and then of course to the other three as well. So now that we have gone over the Hockey Hall of Fame news, how about we jump into some other stuff that's gone on in the hockey world as of late? So, there's been a lot going on since the Stanley Cup was awarded to the Colorado Avalanche. Of course, they had their parade and celebration yesterday, which was probably wonderful. I did not watch it. I need to go back and find a video of it, but by all accounts, it was a wonderful celebration. Apparently the Denver police thought Bowen Byram was just some random fan that had jumped over the barricade and was trying to get him to go back with the general public, but that's a funny story. Of course, he's very young and just looks like a kid, so I could see, I guess, how they would get that confused, but you'd think they'd know what the Avalanche players look like, but hey, whatever. It makes for a funny story, at least. But switching away from those two teams, the Colorado Avalanche and the Tampa Bay Lightning, for a bit, because these podcasts have been heavy on them lately, since, of course, they were the two in the Stanley Cup final. Staying out east for a moment, though, Don Sweeney, the general manager of the Boston Bruins, was extended for 2 years, and a lot of the fan sentiment that I saw on Twitter was not very happy about this. I'm not sure exactly why Bruins fans don't like Sweeney, but From what I saw, people weren't too thrilled. Of course, they did fire head coach Bruce Cassidy a few weeks back. They have gone on to hire a new head coach, but I will get to that in just a few moments. If you are a Bruins fan watching this, or if you have Bruins fans that are close to you and know why they do not like Don Sweeney, let me know down in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can watch this on YouTube if you want. youtube.com/c/FromCenterIce. That link will be in the show notes for you to make it easy. Or you can hit me up on social media as well. Those links are also in the show notes for you. But let's jump over to coaching. So we learned that Barry Trotz will not be coaching in the NHL next season. He was fired from the New York Islanders, and it was basically Barry Trotz watch after he was fired. Like, where is he going to sign? Which team is going to get him? Because he's a fantastic coach. But he said that he doesn't feel like he can give 100% right now and has some personal and family things to take care of. He turned down a job with the Winnipeg Jets. They were very high on him. I believe he is from the Winnipeg area, maybe just from Manitoba. But he turned down a job with them, and he will not be coaching in the NHL next season. So I guess good for him for knowing his limits, knowing when he can't give it his all and when to take a break. I hope that Barry and his family are okay and that we will see him coaching once again in the NHL soon, or in a different position in hockey if he wants to move on from coaching, maybe be in management or doing something else in the hockey world, because he seems to be a very well-respected guy within hockey communities. So, again, I hope him and his family are okay. But the Vancouver Canucks making news again, not just with the Hockey Hall of Fame inductions, but with some coaching news as well, which came out today. So they named Mike Yeo and Trent Cole assistant coaches for the Vancouver Canucks, and I just want to know how Mike Yeo keeps getting NHL coaching jobs, because he also keeps getting fired after his teams do poorly, and then just always ends up getting hired again. And I guess it's that old hockey men, the old boys club, and they just recycle names all the time. But I just don't get it. Maybe he will do better as an assistant coach than he did as a head coach. We'll see how it goes, I guess. But the biggest news coming out of the Vancouver Canucks organization is that Jeremy Colleton, former coach of the Chicago Blackhawks and Rockford IceHogs, has been hired as the head coach of the Abbotsford Canucks, the Vancouver Canucks American League affiliate. And I am so excited to follow along Abbotsford's season next year to see how they do. They were pretty good this season. They got knocked out in the playoffs, but they had a pretty good year. I think they made the playoffs, at least. Now I'm reconsidering that and second guessing myself. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I am so happy for him that he got another coaching gig. He was very good for the IceHogs when he was their head coach. Took them to the playoffs in 2018, where they were eliminated by the Texas Stars in the Western Conference Final. So they almost got to the Calder Cup Final, but that was the year that the jeez, guys, I can't speak today. I am so sorry. That was the year the Toronto Marlies won the Calder Cup. So they probably would have gotten demolished anyway had they made it there. but he was a very good coach for them. He's a good communicator with kids and good at developing guys. He was put into a very shitty situation in Chicago. I don't think he was ready to come up and be a head coach in the NHL, and he was just put in a losing situation from the beginning. First of all, he had to replace Joel Quenneville, who was beloved amongst the players and also all of the fans. Of course, this was before everything with Kyle Beach came out. But the Blackhawks fired Joel Quenneville. Jeremy stepped in as the interim, and everybody hated him right off of the bat because he was replacing Joel Quenneville, and nobody was happy to see him go, even though it was time. And that doesn't say anything about Coach Q's coaching abilities, because we all know that he was how should I say this now? He was, I wanted to say he was a very good coach in the NHL, a very great coach in the NHL. He was, I don't know how to say this now after everything that we know. He was good at getting good results on the ice from his teams. Maybe not so great behind the scenes in certain situations, which we now know, but players who were not assaulted by video coaches seem to like him very much. So Jeremy had to come in and replace him, and it seemed like the veteran players didn't want to listen to him right from the jump because he was like the same age as Brent Seabrook, I want to say, when he became head coach. And I think him and Siebes actually played together. So the veterans didn't seem to buy in. The younger guys did, and they seemed to do well under Jeremy, but I think that his voice was just lost in the room because the older guys didn't buy in right away, especially Jonathan Toews and Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook when they were all still here. Of course, Toews is still here, but the other two, when they were still here, they didn't buy into his coaching schemes and didn't seem to be very happy with him, and I think that just kind of trickled down. That mindset just kind of went throughout the team, and he lost the room, and then everything just kept going downhill. Plus, he wasn't given a very good roster to run with. You can all thank Mr. Stan Bowman for that. He was just not given a good situation. He had to come in and replace Q. He was given a bad roster and was just expected to make something out of it. And of course, that didn't happen. So people weren't big fans of Jeremy Colleton, but I think that he will do a really good job being a head coach back in the American League, and maybe one day works his way back up to being an NHL head coach. But moving on to different teams, so I don't just turn this whole podcast into people hating Jeremy for dumb reasons. The coaching carousel this offseason has been pretty insane so far. So some previous head coach hires that I may or may not have gone over already, but were not totally recent. The New York Islanders named Lane Lambert their head coach. Bruce Cassidy was hired by the Vegas Golden Knights. Peter DeBoer was hired for the head coaching job of the Dallas Stars, of course, coming from Vegas, and then Bruce Cassidy coming from Boston. All of these coaches switching places. John Tortorella named head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. Paul Maurice being named head coach of the Florida Panthers. And, of course, Luke Richardson here in Chicago. But then we had more. So Going back to Boston, Jim Montgomery was hired as their head coach. He spent the last 2 seasons as an assistant coach for the St. Louis Blues, and before going to the Blues, he coached the Dallas Stars for 2 seasons, but he was fired in December of 2019 for unprofessional conduct, whatever that meant to them. But it came out after he was fired that he had been receiving counseling for alcohol abuse, and then he checked himself into an inpatient residential program. So it seemed like coming out of that and getting the job with the St. Louis Blues, he was able to stay sober and get back on track in the hockey world and really keep that momentum going. So I hope everything is still going well for Jim Montgomery. I wish him the best for his career with the Boston Bruins. Of course, I know not many people are fans of the Bruins, and I'm not wishing for Bruins success necessarily, but I hope that he has a good time there, and him personally, I hope he is doing well. And then more head coaching news. Bob Bugner was fired as the head coach for the San Jose Sharks. He was promoted from assistant to head coach in December of 2020. They also fired their assistant coaches, and if you haven't been keeping up with the San Jose Sharks, they are searching for a GM currently. Joe Will, their assistant GM, has taken over the GM role while they are continuing their search, but they did want to let the new GM, whoever that may be, they wanted to let, I'm going to say him, but maybe them, it may be a male or a female or somebody who identifies as they, them. They wanted to let their new GM hire their own coaching staff. So they got rid of Bob Bugner and all of their assistant coaches. And Pierre LeBrun tweeted yesterday that whoever they hire will likely be a first-time NHL GM. So not one of these recycled names that I had just talked about with Mike Yeo being named assistant coach in Vancouver. So that will be interesting. As it stands currently, the San Jose Sharks and the Winnipeg Jets are the only 2 teams without a head coach. Detroit also announced a hiring for head coach. My cat has something to say about the hiring in Detroit, apparently. Are you a Detroit Red Wings fan? Where did you come from? Who raised you? Are you a Red Wings fan? That is not acceptable in this Blackhawks house, sir. Anyway, Derek Lalonde was hired as head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. He replaces Jeff Blashill, who was the coach for the last few years in Detroit. And for the last 4 seasons, Lalonde has been an assistant coach for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And interestingly enough, he was also hired by Steve Yzerman in Tampa in July of 2018. And now, of course, Steve Yzerman is the GM of the Detroit Red Wings. So he went back and got his guy from Tampa and brought him to Detroit. And since he's been with him for the past 4 seasons, that means he was there through the 2 Stanley Cup wins and was there for this trip to the Stanley Cup final. So he's got some really good experience, even though he was only an assistant coach. Say only, being an assistant coach in the NHL is a very good position. But now he gets his shot at being a head coach, and it's his first time with a head coaching job in the NHL. So we'll see how he does. They've got some very promising guys there in Detroit. Of course, the Calder Trophy winner in Moritz Seider as the Rookie of the Year, and they also have Lucas Raymond. We'll see how Nedeljkovic does in net next year, but they've got some really promising guys. So if this new coach can bring in some winning ways, then maybe this thing turns around in Detroit. And then in other coaching news, but not head coaching news, Emily Engel-Natsky was promoted to video coordinator by the Washington Capitals. She spent the last 2 seasons as video coach with the Hershey Bears, which is the Washington Capitals American League affiliate. So with her being promoted to this new title, she is the first woman to be a full-time coach in the NHL. So that is super exciting. We'll see how that goes for her. I'm sure it will go very well. She's been very praised with her video coaching job with Hershey and coming up into being a video coach and all of that. I don't know a whole lot about her, but I have heard very good things and that she is very good at her job, which would make sense since she was promoted to this job with the Capitals. So that is awesome to hear for her, and being the first woman to be a full-time coach in the NHL is something that will always stick with her and something that will always be in NHL history. So that's really cool. And hopefully one day that doesn't have to be such big news, like, yay, they hired a woman to be a coach. But for now, it is, and congratulations to her for being the first one. We have seen a lot more women being hired into big roles in the NHL lately. Assistant GMs, now video coordinator. So women are really breaking into the league, and it's really cool to see, and it shows that NHL teams are hiring the best people for the job and not just hiring the best men for the job. Nobody wants to be hired as the woman of the organization just because they are not a man. That's not what anybody is asking for or wants here. Any woman hired just wants to be put in that position because she is the best person for that job. And I think that's really what's going on here in the NHL. Maybe teams are making more of an effort to look at candidates who are women to be more inclusive, which is great, but of course teams should always hire the best person for that job. And everything that I've read about Emily and seen from people around the Hershey organization and the Capitals organization suggests that she is the best person for this job. So congratulations to her, and of course congrats again for being the first woman to be a full-time coach in the NHL, because that's just awesome, and I'm sure we will see more of that coming up. But we also have some signing news in the NHL. So Kevin Fiala signed a massive extension with the Los Angeles Kings. 7 years, $7.875 million per season. And you may be thinking, Kevin Fiala didn't play for the Los Angeles Kings last year. And you would be right, because right before the extension, there was a trade between the Los Angeles Kings and the Minnesota Wild, which is who he did play for this past season. So this trade involved the LA Kings getting Kevin Fiala, and in return, Minnesota got Brock Faber, a defensive prospect, as well as LA's 2022 first-round draft pick, which is 19th overall. So Brock is a 19-year-old defenseman. He is from Minnesota and currently plays for the University of Minnesota and is going to be their captain this upcoming season. So it makes sense for the Minnesota Wild to go out and target him as somebody to trade for. And he's also very highly regarded as a defenseman, so he doesn't put up that many points. His first year with the University of Minnesota, he scored 1 goal and 11 assists for 12 points in 27 games. And then his second year, which was this past year, He scored 2 goals and 12 assists for 14 points. So 1 more goal, 1 more assist in 32 games. So he's not going to put up a bunch of points for you, but from what I have read about him, and for full transparency, I don't know a whole lot about Brock Faber, but I know that he is pretty highly regarded in prospect circles, and apparently he is very good in the defensive side of the game. So that is a great get for Minnesota, I believe. In my opinion, at least. That is a very good get for them. And Minnesota has to clear cap space because they are in a world of hurt right now. They couldn't afford to re-sign Kevin Fiala, so getting that haul for him was great news for them, and he's going to be a very good player for the LA Kings this year. This past season, he had a career year, putting up 33 goals and 52 assists for 85 points. That was a career high in goals, assists, and points. He's only 25. So you could say he's in his prime. Maybe he gets better. And they're really building something nice there in LA. They've got some really good young pieces there. And I think Kevin Fiala can complement that well. Of course, they went out and they got Philip Deneau last offseason. So they have the defensive forward that they brought in. Now they have their offensive forward, and they have their prospects to fill in around them. And of course, they still have Andre Kopitar and Drew Doughty, and Jonathan Quick is still there, Cal Peterson. So LA is going to be very interesting to watch next season. But going back to Minnesota and how they couldn't afford to re-sign Kevin Fiala because they bought out Zach Parise and Ryan Suter last offseason, and I know that seems like it was about 20 years ago at this point, but the cap penalty against them is harsh for a couple upcoming seasons. So for the 2022-23 season, so next season, their cap penalty is $6.371 million for each player against the cap. So 12 point whatever math. And then in the 2023-24 season and the 24-25 season, it is $7.371 million per player, those 2 seasons. And then luckily for Minnesota, it goes down after that to $833,000 from 2025 through the 2027-28 season, which is just really weird to think about in my head. Saying 2025 and 2028, like they're years that I can think about, is very weird. So yeah, they are in a world of hurt when it comes to cap space for the next few seasons. Luckily for them, this offseason, they don't have as many expiring contracts, especially now that they have gotten rid of Kevin Fiala. But they do only have Cam Talbot under contract as an NHL goaltender. They do have Jesper Wallstedt in the system. I don't know that he's ready to come up and be a backup to Cam Talbot, but you can get backup goaltenders for cheap in the NHL, under $1 million or $1 million. But next offseason, they have to re-sign Tyson Yost if they want to re-sign him. They have Matt Boldy, they have Kalen Addison, and Matt Dumba is up at the end of this coming year. Now, I could see him being a trade deadline piece if they are not in a great spot. Nothing really suggests that they won't be in the playoffs unless losing Kevin Fiala is really going to hurt them that badly, which it leaves a hole, but they still have Kirill Kaprizov. If Ryan Hartman can keep producing, that is great for them. If Matt Boldy can keep producing, If all of these guys that they have, they can still make the playoffs. So if they don't, maybe they look to trade Matt Dumba at the trade deadline, or even if they are in the playoffs, maybe they look to upgrade in a different position and they trade Matt Dumba. He's on the books for roughly $6 million. So if they either trade him or let him walk, that's $6 million off the cap, which will cover part of one of Suter or Parise's buyouts. But Cam Talbot's contract is also up after this coming season. So unless Jesper Wallstedt is ready or they find some other goaltender to come in, they're going to have to figure out their goaltenders. Plus, a lot of AHL contracts are up this year. Those are going to be cheap to fill in. Whether they re-sign guys or bring different guys in, those aren't going to break the bank, but it's something they still have to keep in mind. So being able to move out Kevin Fiala and actually get a very good return for him is great news for the Minnesota Wild. They can draft a guy here in the first round, 19th overall. There's no saying whether he will be NHL ready. Probably not, but we've seen crazier things happen. It could totally be possible. And then whenever Brock Faber is ready to make the jump from college to the NHL, he will be on his entry-level deal, so that will be cheap for them as well, and they are really going to need guys to contribute on cheap contracts, especially while those buyouts are eating up a bunch of cap. But moving on from them, Tampa Bay also signed some guys. So Darren Radish, former defenseman for the Rockford Ice Hogs, they re-signed him for 2 years at $762,000 a year. So not a huge contract there. Definitely a depth guy. Probably plays in Syracuse unless they need to move out a defensive contract and he wins a spot on the team in camp. But also they re-signed Nick Paul. And that's a pretty big contract. So 7 years, $3.15 million per season. And I mean, 7 years might be a lot. He came in at the trade deadline from the Ottawa Senators, and he was a pretty big contributor in their playoff run this postseason. I don't know. I haven't looked at Nick Paul's previous years, to be truly honest. I don't know a whole lot about him before this year and him being a big trade target at the deadline and then producing for them in the postseason. So I don't know how his career has really gone so far. So maybe signing him for those 7 years, you anticipate maybe he gets better, produces more with you. And if not, I mean, it's only $3 million, but Tampa has not a whole lot of cap room to work with. And I read that they still want to re-sign Andre Palat, and I just don't know how they're going to make that happen without making some trades, especially after this signing with Nick Paul. I figured they would try to re-sign him after how good he was for them in the postseason. I don't know about 7 years. I'm kind of skeptical on that, but we'll see. It's Tampa Bay, so it will probably work out great for them, and he will go on to score about 5 Stanley Cup winning goals for them, and it'll all be great. But we'll see, I guess. If you are a Tampa Bay fan watching this, how do you feel about that contract? It's not super pricey, $3 million for 7 years. If he does get better, that could be looked at as an absolute steal of a contract. But if he regresses, then it's not going to look that great. But I don't see him really regressing. But again, I don't know a whole lot about his career thus far, so take that as you will. Some other signings in Dallas, Scott Wedgwood re-signed with them. He's a 29-year-old goaltender. He signed for 2 years at $1 million per year. And I think that's a really nice signing for the Dallas Stars. Scott Wedgwood had an interesting season. He started with the New Jersey Devils, and then, of course, Mackenzie Blackwood got injured. He was able to fill in and get some wins for them. Then he ended up with the Arizona Coyotes and was putting in some good starts for them as well. Maybe got a few too many wins for Arizona's liking, so they sent him off to the Dallas Stars, and he played pretty well there too. So he was this backup / third string goaltender that you could just put in to get quality starts out of him. But if they do move on from Braden Holtby and Anton Hudobin, which I didn't look at their contract status, I don't know if they're still signed through this year or not, but if they move on from those two, then they have Scott Wedgwood there to back up Jake Ottinger. And Scott is a veteran guy that can support Jake Ottinger and that Jake can learn from. And has been through a bunch of NHL teams. He's paid his dues. He can really teach Jake Ottinger how to be that professional NHL goaltender, and then Ottinger's skill will take over from there. We saw he almost stole that series for Dallas against the Calgary Flames. Maybe round 2 would have been a little more interesting than Edmonton winning in 5 games had they gone on to do that. It would have been very interesting to see Jake Ottinger up against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Evander Kane in the second round to see if he would have done a bit better than Jacob Markstrom did, who, as a Vezina finalist, really shit the bed there for Calgary in the second round. So I think that is a very good signing for the Dallas Stars. They have a good veteran goaltender who can give you quality starts and can be sort of a mentor for Jake Ottinger, who you would have to assume takes over the starting role next year for the Stars. And in other goaltender signing news, Craig Anderson, he signed an extension with the Buffalo Sabres, 1 year at $1.5 million. I was really hoping that he would sign with the Chicago Blackhawks this offseason. He's from Chicago. He's nearing the end of his career. He played well for the Sabres last year, which is pretty difficult for a goaltender to do. Now, Buffalo's getting better, and they did add some pieces in that Jack Eichel trade, so they're not as miserable as they were there for a few years. So maybe Craig Anderson just really enjoyed his time there playing with the new kids around. I know Buffalo wanted to re-sign him, so good for Craig if he likes his job there in Buffalo. He's 41 years old, but was still putting up quality starts for them last year. And again, I wished he would have signed with the Blackhawks. He's from the Chicago area. It would have been cool for him to finish out his career here, but he will probably get some better games in Buffalo because it's going to be a rough road here in Chicago for a little bit. Moving on from the signings now, Anthony Duclair had surgery yesterday to repair a torn Achilles, which just makes me cringe thinking about that injury. But a lot of guys were injured in the playoffs this year. Valery Nichushkin for the Colorado Avalanche posted a picture of his broken foot x-ray, and how he played on that, I have no idea. It just looked horrible. Apparently there's a contract signing that just happened now. I see my phone lighting up. Oh, more Vancouver Canucks news. Brock Besser signed a 3-year deal with the Canucks at $6.65 million per season. That was tweeted out by Chris Johnston. So breaking news here on the podcast as it's winding down. Brock Besser extension with the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, Nichushkin's broken foot. I don't know how he played on that. Absolutely ridiculous. And we learned Nazem Kadri couldn't tie his skates there after his thumb surgery. So how he scored that overtime winning goal, I will never know. Adrenaline, determination, all of the above. Just incredible. And in other random NHL news, Alexander Giorgiev is apparently requesting a trade from the New York Rangers. He's a goaltender, and I wonder if the Blackhawks look into that. He didn't have the best season. He was, of course, the backup to Igor Shesterkin, your Vezina Trophy winner. He's 26, I believe, so maybe he wants a shot at a starting role, and if he wants to come here to Chicago and try that out, and if he loses games, it doesn't really matter because we need to be bad anyway, then hey, maybe it's good. But in that case, it would probably turn around to bite Chicago in the ass, and he would have a career season and lead them to the playoffs. They would get a shittier draft pick. So you know what? I've already changed my mind. Don't even target Alexander Giorgiev, but it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. I saw a lot of people in replies on Twitter talking about him going to Toronto because he would be better than Mrazek. I don't know that he would after the year he put up, but it's quite possible. Of course, Peter Mrazek's still on contract for 2 more seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That deal you would have to assume gets moved this offseason. They still need to re-sign Jack Campbell if they want to do that. So it's going to be interesting to watch for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But I will wind this down here since we are around an hour. There's been a lot going on. I feel like it was just me reading headlines this whole time because so much has happened since the cup was awarded. But if you are watching this and you are not a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks, let me know your team. Let me know what they have been up to so far this postseason. Do you like the direction they are going? Do you not like the direction they are going? So far for the Blackhawks, we have only gotten our head coach. As far as player movement, we have no idea. That could be totally irrelevant by the time I post this podcast, which I am going to take it right off of the camera and upload it and all of that. But you never know. In the NHL, things just happen to break at random times. But apparently things are heating up with the Alex DeBrincat trade market. So we will see there. But yeah, there's been a lot going on in the NHL, and it's only going to get crazier because, like I said earlier, the draft begins next Thursday. Free agency opens on the 13th. And there's just no slowing down. The season just ended, but we are about to get right back into crazy season, and then maybe in August there will be some downtime. I don't know, y'all. What do you expect from the NHL world during this offseason? What do you think your team is going to do? If you are a Blackhawks fan, do you think they are actually going to trade Alex DeBrincat? And if so, do you think that is a good idea, a bad idea? Let me know. I will have some more thoughts on that for the Cozy Cast on Monday, so definitely stay tuned for that. I'm also doing a Q&A for the Cozy Cast on Monday, so I am taking questions today, Friday, and also tomorrow, Saturday. I do have to record that one ahead of time, so I cannot take questions up until Monday. But if you are watching and or listening to this in time to get your questions in, go ahead and do that. There's a post up on the community tab on YouTube asking for questions. There's also one on Instagram and Twitter. So you can look wherever you want. Leave your questions there. But saying all of that, I am going to end this happy hour podcast episode that has just felt like an absolute whirlwind of information. So I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I hope your teams aren't screwing up too badly. And I will catch you all in the Cozy Cast on Monday. So until then, if you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. If you haven't, give this podcast video a like. If you are listening on a podcasting app, give me a rating and a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. That would make me so very pleased. We don't have too many ratings yet, so it's always nice to see those pop up. If you want to follow along on social media, like I said a bit earlier, those links are down in the show notes for you and the description on YouTube. But other than that, thank you all so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Happy July, happy Friday. I hope y'all have a great weekend, and I will catch y'all on Monday. Bye, guys.